What up, what up?
What's up, all you listeners out there in the internet world? Welcome back to Airplane Rollerblades. Bunch of kids from Michigan just talking about music. Should just remind you that if you liked listening to us, you can always like the button, hit the like button,
If you hit
the
that button,
subscribe button. We
then
would
you'll
like
get more things.
Yeah.
And that's
It's
great
not
for
always
everybody,
easy
right?
to produce these and put these out, but the more people that get involved in listening, it helps us out a lot. So anyway, we're really, really stoked to have our good friend going by Ray Caraway stage name at the moment. I guess there's going to be a band with a new name in the works, but
Yep.
we got our good friend LR today on the when I saw the stage name for the first time, the thing that it made me think of was Nick Caraway, protagonist-ish narrator
Gatsby, right?
of Great Gatsby. Yeah. I don't know if
Is the inspiration there?
So the name, when I changed it, the Caraway I'm actually going by is like, I don't know if any of y'all read this when you were in like 4th or 5th grade. There's a book, I think it's by Jerry Spinelli. I think it was the same guy who did the book Hoot and all these other like kind of like socially conscious.
Jerry Spinelli is like a novel author for like
Yeah.
young adults. He's got some teen novel awards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I read Maniac McGee, which was like
the
kind
baseball
of
kid. Yeah, like
he was like a homeless athlete who was like kind of a problematic white savior of like a segregated town. It was like when I read it, I was like, oh yeah, cool, like we're all living together in harmony. And now I like kind of looked back at it and was like, oh, that's kind of messed up.
yeah, like if you've ever his books, they try pretty hard to be like, teach kids some valuable lessons, to be socially conscious and aware. But Stargirl was my favorite, and it was about this really cool girl who was kind of, I guess now you'd call her kind of a hipster, but she's kind of like this drifter high school student who was new to the school. And her last name, they didn't talk about it much in the book. Her last name was Caraway, and I loved like that book as a kid. So that was like part of my development, I guess. So yeah, LR being Lily Ray, Lily like the flower, Ray, like Ray from Star Wars, and so yeah, Caraway being Stargirl. So
that's really
Nice.
interesting. I
Yeah.
did read Stargirl as a adolescent or a teen or whenever it came out. I distinctly remember being a fan of that book, but I don't remember the detail about her actual name.
like
'cause it's
this
been
was Jerry
such a long
Spinelli, right? I
time.
think because there's also like Louis Sacker, who I always get mixed up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they're both kind of similar artists. They have
Louis
kind of
Sacker
like a
did Holes,
unique
right?
Yeah, they kind of
Oh,
like
yep,
a unique
yeah,
sense of humor
that
in their
sounds
writing,
Right.
but do like books that are like pretty heavy content for like younger people. But yeah, Stargirl, I remember because it has like the little stick figure
Yeah.
on the cover. Yeah, that was a really good book, but I guess I don't remember as much as I thought about it. It's been probably 15 years
I
since
also
I
want
read
to say
it.
it was like set in like Arizona or somewhere that like books aren't usually set in because it's not a very exciting place, relatively speaking. Where to, like,
Arizona's got so much.
it's got so much, but it's like it's
got
not.
the Grand Canyon.
Dry heat and like
It's
rich
got
old people.
rattlesnakes.
It's got Tucson.
Phoenix.
Phoenix.
That's fair.
Isn't I don't know. I
What?
don't know.
I've never been to Phoenix.
I like Phoenix. I like to hike there though, so I don't know. I don't know about anything else otherwise.
Well, where does your family live in Arizona somewhere where you're always going to
They
hang
don't.
out?
They just have my aunt has a place in Scottsdale, which is just outside of
Oh,
Phoenix.
Scottsdale. That's
That's
where
like-
like all the dry heat and all the rich old people are.
Yeah, and so it's not like I have explored around the town too much. I mainly have explored around the hiking areas and hung out at a pool, and obviously with my family. That's fun too. It's super fun.
Well, let's pivot onto onto music because that's. I mean, we like to talk about all sorts of things, on the podcast, but we're musicians and the people we're interviewing are musicians, so obviously it's going to naturally gravitate towards that. And yeah, Lily, you got a lot of you're sort of a jack of all trades in the music scene. You're
like that.
a writer, performer. You've been playing a lot more lately.
Yeah.
But then you're also involved in like coordinating events and like booking bands and finding new avenues and venues and spaces for people to play at and all sorts of stuff. So you're like very much coming at this scene from a lot of different angles.
I like that. Yeah. So back in like, I think it was like March, me and this friend of mine, I was boarding at like one of the co-ops around here at the time, and I met this kid, when I was boarding there, this kid, Dominic Vitucci, whose like DJ name is Parakeet. He used to DJ a lot more around the area. He's gone for the summer, but he and I were looking to book some shows together, and we recognized that neither of us have a following. You know, we knew that neither of us could really do what we wanted to do on our own. And so, because I had spent the last several months in the summer before that, the previous year, living with these two kids here from Pocket Candies, I kind of watched how they kind of banded together other artists and other acts under the same billing, you know, because, you know, you have power in numbers and that kind of thing. And, you know, when a venue looks at you with several people just versus just, you know, one or two of you, you know, it kind of helps them have some confidence that you're going to bring in profit for them, and, you know, you're going to draw a crowd, and it's just kind of more of a win-win for everybody, and you're building community while you're at it. So Dom and I started this thing called the Neti Collective, which I'll admit he named because he's really into like Eastern wellness and that kind of thing. And so, you know, like a neti pot, you pour it through your nose, helps cleanse the headspace. So
Those things are no joke. They really work.
They do.
You don't fuck around with a neti pot. That stuff.
They're like their journey that you come out on the other side.
I didn't know my sinuses went that far up in my head until I used one of those.
It was a funny name, and I liked it. And the little nickname we have for the people who like are artists with us, who like contribute and like be part of the events, are like Neti Yetis. And so the first place we did was Club Above, and our first event was called Sad Songs for Soft Boys. And we used that title because Dom and I had both been accused of being soft boys at various points in our dating escapades. So we decided, instead of being upset about it, we would kind of tease at it a little bit. And so back before Johnny Depp was hitting people in the face with iPhones, we used his likeness from Cry Baby for the poster, and it has like this weird like vapor wavy kind of feel to it, and it has like a little teardrop, and people liked it a lot. And we had yoga, like live, like we had deep house yoga involved as part of the first ever Neti event, and it was really well intended, but it went over very strangely. So we kind of ixnayed the yoga, and from then on,
Why did it go over strangely? Because I think that was while we were on tour, so we didn't get to make it to your first Neti Collective event.
Just trying to get people to do yoga when you're in a bar and you hear like beer bottles like clinking, and hear people talking out in the corner, and
right,
like,
it's not like the most zen
no
atmosphere.
Yeah,
it's kind of interesting combining those things, though. I've never heard of anyone trying that.
I think it was one of the guys that I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, it was this guy Will, who was an instructor, I think at like Awaken Ann Arbor, who Dom was friends with, who he got to do the thing at the time, and I think a friend of ours, Elena, was also a part of it as well. And that was cool, but it was a good idea. This wasn't the right time and place for it. But I ended up booking more shows at Dom, and through that, I found there was this kid, Tyler Denig, who has worked at like a million places around town. He used to work at Sweetwater's. He was a really good barista. Now he's like working in a marketing firm. He does chiptune music, and I saw on Facebook that he had been doing this chiptune stuff and had yet to play a gig. So I helped him book his first show, and he was just really involved with Neti from the start, and now he's actually like my main booking partner while like Dom's been gone and that sort of thing. And like we've been doing a lot of stuff, but that second show was where it really kicked off. We had him, we had this guy who plays in the Diag. He does like this drone music through like a feedback loop. His name was like Dharma Hardasatva. Pretty interesting dude. We had Bobby Jack. Then I performed that night as well. It was a fun time. And after that, we had another one at Club Above. We had After Hours. We had Munch. We had Follow Land. So I mean, we've had a pretty eclectic setup of acts. Travis Preston has been in there as well. So we try not to keep it to one genre. And you know, it started at Club Above. Club Above was kind of our home turf. Now we moved on to Blind Pig. We're doing Cafe Ollie this Thursday for Beer Fest. This Friday and Saturday in Ypsi, Cafe Ollie in Depot Town for Beer Fest. We're doing like these after parties. Friday is an acoustic event with Tear Soup, this guy named Nate Schmall, who's a local singer-songwriter. a few other people as well that are friends with Tyler. And then on Saturday, we have some chip tunes. So Veston Tyler, Kneecaps, who's an Ypsi local. So yeah, that'll be a cool event. I'm not going to be a part of that one. I'm going to be like an MC, I think, for the Friday event. But Saturday, I'm representing at Nakamura's Rockamura Festival, which is...
Yeah.
If y'all haven't been, you should definitely show up. It is one of two. There's that, and there's Luther Fest the following weekend. But Rockamora, I personally like more 'cause it's just one day, one straight shot, and it. Yeah, that house is insane. I mean, I don't know. It's not something I can really put into a box. Honestly, you kind of have to just go and experience it because I don't really know how to. I don't even know how to describe Rockamora, but it's like, the house is a pterodactyl on the roof, if that's a good way to start off.
I was just about to say, that's like the first descriptor is like when you know the thing that shows you this is Knock is this giant iron pterodactyl piece of art hanging out on the roof. I love Rockamora. They really do a great job of doing the multiple stage things, especially in just, small space. They got the basement going, the living room shows, and they got the stuff out back, outside for like the open concerts. And my favorite part about it is it's like right in that main drag where you can like go across the street and get a snack real quick. So it's like when you're hungry, you like barely have to take a break.
There's a liquor store, there's Quickie Burger, there's BTB. It's like there's some free advertising for these guys, but there's some good shit going on across the street.
You listen to some music, you eat some burrito.
You need those burritos. That's like a lifeline at one point, especially because that's open all night. So I mean, like you drink enough alcohol, it's like. I think last year I took a thermos. I had half of it filled with Coke, half of it filled with Sailor Jerry, and that was quite enough. I think that got me through the day.
Is that recommended or is it too much? What do you recommend people bring?
I think that
the contraband.
It depends on what time you're heading out. If you're gonna head out by 10 or 11, do some day drinking. If you want to stay all night, maybe start slow. Drink at 6 on. I drank at like 4 on when like Drew Elder and his peeps were like playing a set. Ian Perfit was part of that, I think, as a drummer, and that was a great time. But I was already getting a little day drunk, and by the time evening rolled around, I actually left and came back. If I remember, one of our friends was having something going on, so I left the party, went hung out with her, and then came back, and it was still like I still was not entirely sober. So I mean. Take it. Go
at your own pace.
Go your own pace.
Yeah, just remember, kids, music festivals are marathons. They're not a sprint. You got to get through quite a few sets to get the full experience. So just pace yourself, stay hydrated, do what you need to do.
There's nothing worse than like throwing up during when your favorite band is like playing. Like if you miss like a set later because you got too fucked up at like 3 in the afternoon.
Impurity ring.
Hey, we don't need to name names.
No one knows who Ethan is. It could be any Ethan. That's not even how you actually say his name.
Could be Ethan Hawke.
Could be an Eton,
my buddy Ethan Hawke.
We hang out with him all the time. You've got a problem. You need to slow down, Mr. Hawke.
Mr. Hawke.
Stick with the movies. Stop doing drugs.
If John Cusack came to like Pitchfork to go hang with Brian Wilson, then I think we probably get Ethan Hawke to come to Rockamora. He's not really in any good movies these days. I mean, he's never like in any.
Wasn't he in Boyhood? That was pretty amazing.
Boyhood was amazing, and then my mom's like classical piano like close friend and kind of someone she's looked up to and has been a person that has helped her with her career and just been a really good friend. He had like a documentary made about his life by Ethan Hawke recently, so that's what he's been working on.
Ethan Hawke's a nice guy. I think I think everyone's too hard on Ethan Hawke personally. Like everyone sees like Daybreakers or The Purge. Yeah, like
he was in the Before
first
trilogy, which is an amazing story. It's probably one of the only romance movies that I like thoroughly enjoy. I guess it's more than
that's
one
the same guy who made Boyhood too. So every time that guy makes what's his Richard Linklater.
Richard Linklater, yeah.
Anytime Richard Linklater makes a movie,
Ethan Hawke should stick with Richard.
Also, director of the movie that got me into music in the first place, School of Rock.
Ethan Hawke or
no,
director Jack Black.
But yeah, Rockamora is gonna be Saturday. This coming Saturday, July 23rd.
Yeah, and not to confuse people about what to do, but there's also a great show going on at the Blind Pig that night that a friend that I work with, Pete, is doing lights for, and he is an incredible lighting designer. it's a punk show. I can't remember the band, but they're famous and Pete's doing lights for them and it's gonna be crazy. So that's not actually that much information on that.
Yeah, so we got a couple of choices. I mean, Rockamere is going to be going on all afternoon. I think they're starting a little bit later, maybe like 5 p.m.
Yeah, my set is at it's like I think it's 7:10 to 7:30. It might go a little later because they always try to push like the events back a little more just so people aren't playing at like 2:00 in the afternoon to nobody. But I mean, yes, this Sam Naples fellow over here might be filling in on the bass, so that might be.
Ooh.
I just may. I had
just informed of it. Yeah,
I had my first experience playing bass. Well, I guess not. I play bass sometimes. Well, just definitely with your solo songs and Pocket Candy sets. I'm playing a lot of bass. But I had my first experience of impromptu bass, essentially playing with a platonic boyfriend last night.
And how did that show go?
I think it was the first show that they'd played in quite a few months, and Noor wasn't there, which is why I was filling in. Noor. So yeah, I was filling the part of Noor, but I played guitar on a couple songs. They had me switch on to drums for radio song. I don't want to cry no more. That one.
Oh really? They
don't want to cry anymore. I was playing drums on that one, and then I played bass on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What's going on?
Oh, that's my favorite Platonic Boyfriends song for sure. Like that song is so good. Do you know what we're talking about?
I'm like
Clay just goes.
I feel really bad because I feel like every time I've been to a Platonic Boyfriend show, it's been like at a house party, which meant that there was a lot of alcohol involved, and so
I think that's how they'd like it. I think they'd be okay with it.
I remember one time there was like I think one of them I'm pretty sure it's Platonic Boyfriends. I think one of them was like putting ketchup on their chest or something.
Oh yes,
and like
that sounds.
It was somewhat erotic in a very in a way that maybe I don't know. I personally don't have a ketchup fetish, but maybe it's for someone out there who does.
Someone's night was made.
Yeah, someone was like, you didn't use enough ketchup, and so like 2 bottles was not enough. But I'm pretty excited for this thing. I think it's gonna be great. These guys. I was originally gonna do like this 2-person duo kind of thing for this occasion. Like I've been doing the last few gigs, and it was only through like kind of fated encounters recently that I decided to do this whole band thing, and it's a little nerve-wracking because the full band has been assembled in the last week, and that's probably something that Greg Hughes of After Hours, who booked this whole thing, probably doesn't want to hear. But
turn this off now.
Yeah, just ignore this. It's gonna be fine. Everyone's gonna be drunk by then anyway. It's okay. But Christopher Salem, he's a local co-op kid. He's a funky drummer. He's really into Red Hot Chili Peppers, a lot of rapcore, that kind of thing. And the first time I met him, I had been posting flyers to find musicians, and I show up to the house he's at, and he opens the door, and he's got this long, curly, dark hair, mustache. He's like wearing no shirt. He's just wearing no shoes. He's just in these really short gym shorts, and like he's like just ripped. And the dude's like eating fruit by like the fistful. He has like he has an orange in each hand, just like fucking like, just like mouthful, just like, dude, I fucking love music, man. We're gonna make this shit amazing. And it's just like so much confidence pouring out of this human being 2 seconds after I meet him, and I knew the second I laid eyes on this kid in the flesh that he was the one, because
he's the drummer.
He is Tarzan. Like, I think this kid actually, he says he's from West Bloomfield, but I don't think so. I think he actually is from the jungle, and he is like humble about his roots, because I've seen this dude climb trees before. Like, he can jump and just like start scaling, and like he is Tarzan in the flesh, and when he's on drums, he's going to be the naked drummer stereotype. That's fine. I'm down with that. Like, I'm not that confident, but perhaps we'll be workout buddies, and we'll work on that. But this kid, he's hilarious. He's a really great dude. I really like being around Chris. He's got a great energy. The guy we've got on guitar is this kid named Johnny Posada. Really gifted. He's got perfect pitch. He's really intuitive with the way he plays. Can play any genre, any style. He's just really, really sweet kid, really soft-spoken. And this other guy, he won't be playing with us for this show. There's a guy who potentially will be the bassist, and we met him because I was at this co-op Progressive the other night for the co-op that Chris lives at, and I decided drunkenly that I wanted a haircut. So we went out onto the roof, and while we were on the roof, we set up a lamp on the roof. This is at like 11 at night, and they're giving me this haircut. And these kids, there's an apartment next door, and these kids in this apartment see I'm getting my haircut. So they come out to their deck, and they see we have beers. They're like, "Do you guys want a shotgun?" And I'm not doing any of that business. I'm trying to get a haircut. But Chris is wearing a construction worker's jacket that he somehow acquired. And so he decides to shotgun with this kid across rooftops. It was a really beautiful moment. And this kid says, "Does one of you play drums? I see you playing drums." And Chris says, "That's me." And this kid's like, "I play bass." And then Chris is like, "What do you like to listen to?" And this kid says, "Red Hot Chili Peppers." And Chris looked like he was going to start crying. Like, Chris loves Red Hot Chili Peppers more than anyone I've ever met in my life. And I guess they had a little jam yesterday, and it went really well. So that's really cool. But yeah, it's just things come together in the weirdest ways. It's like, it's a band has to be approached, I feel like, a relationship. Like, you can't go around looking for a girl to fall in love with you. It's never going to work. You kind of have to just, like, not lower your expectations, but just don't go looking for it and just kind of see what comes to you. And in this scenario, like this all kind of like culminated pretty miraculously within the course of like a few weeks without me trying to make it happen, which is why I feel really good about it. And so, yeah, we're going to be doing a small set of it'll be like 3 covers, 1 original. Pretty excited about it. The covers, I think you can guess, we'll be doing a Chili Peppers song, obviously. Hopefully doing a VU song as well as like maybe a Nin song as well, 9 Inch Nails. So don't want to reveal too much. Won't give specifics, but yeah,
Can
just
we
give you
talk
an
about
idea.
your originals a little bit? Are they written by...
Yeah,
Totally
well, what is your
you,
process
what's the
also?
Oh,
process?
man. Jesus. Okay, so...
yeah, I'm getting into it.
Getting into it. I need
The
to have
hard-hitting
a
questions.
sip of this hot totty to get me feeling vulnerable here. All right. So this kid, I kind of want to, this is a really like kind of like out there way to phrase it. I don't want to compare myself to someone of this caliber, but like when you read about the way that like, I guess Led Zeppelin would compose their songs versus other bands, where Robert Plant would kind of hear what was going on with the instrumentals and then come in at the kind of, as the last 80%, it was at 80%, kind of bringing in the 20% to finish it, kind of adding a vocal to something that was sort of, for the most part, written. That's kind of the way I like to go about it. And I like to write lyrics. I like, my free time when I'm out on walks. When I read the news, especially, things come to me. It brings up, like, anything that stirs up a lot of emotion. And it's weird because it used to be this really personal thing when I was younger, things that really personally affected me. And now I realize that, like, the empathy or, like, the disgust sometimes that I have for the things that I read going on with other people drives a lot more emotion in me sometimes than the things going on in my own life, which is kind of a good thing, because sometimes, you're not going to be out living the most exciting life every day, of the week. 6 out of 7 days of the week are going to be work days, and you might not be able to go out and live and experience things. But, when you turn on the TV, or, in this case, it's like you just look at your phone and, you find out about some of the crazy shit that's going on. It's like, this is such a ripe year for some amazing cathartic music making. So if there aren't some great albums this year, I'm going to be really disappointed. I mean, there's just so much war and terror and like this election. Just there's so many insane things happening that if there's not some sort of like artistic movement speaking out against it, even on like the smallest grassroots level, it's going to be really disappointing, because there hasn't been a more ripe political climate like this since probably I would say like the late 60s, early 70s. Like, we're in a really, really interesting time right now, and I feel like people need to start making music and making art for those reasons again. And it's not just about how we feel in our own bedrooms on our own time. I think it's like we need to be thinking about each other a lot more. And I've been seeing a lot more of an outpouring to really marginalized communities in the last couple of years. And this is something that really like excites me, because I feel like that's been lacking for a long time, So when you see the rise of things like Black Lives Matter, or people speaking out against bathroom bills, against transgender people, or when, you see people, it sucks what happened with the Bernie campaign, but at least it was going the way it was for so long, because it gives me some sort of hope that there is some sort of revolution bubbling up. And I don't know, I hope it doesn't turn violent. Obviously, I hope it doesn't cause I hope it doesn't stir the pot in a way that's going to be harmful to people. But at the same time, I hope that something happens as a result of all of this. I hope people don't just like kind of turn over and take it. I hope that people, if we oh man, if we, God forbid, do get a Trump presidency, I hope that, we see some great art come out because of it. And obviously we've seen stuff from people like Kendrick Lamar and Radiohead, people reacting to like the political climate, but there needs to be more than that. It needs to be more than just this top tier of really popular artists who are saying stuff, so like I said, that's where I come from when I make things. That's where I think there's a lot of emotion in my bandmates. I've noticed they all feel the same way I do. They're really fed up with going to a college for 4 years for X amount of dollars that they're never going to be able to pay off. That might not guarantee them a job. And I think this is something that among our generation is a pretty prevalent motivation for doing what we do. And some people are going to go along with the bullshit because it's an easier way to pay off your debts. It's an easier way to kind of get over it. But I noticed that a lot, especially with artists, that's not a thing. Most artists do not like status quo in any way. And I feel like if you do, it doesn't mean you're not a creative person, but I feel like there are people who are talented in a way that's, in the realm of art. And I think there are artists, there are people who definitely would be willing to starve for what they want to do. And I feel like the guys I'm with are of that caliber. And I don't want them to hear this and be pressured by that. But at the same time, my drummer has no interest in material stuff. The guitarist, he's not a guy who cares about that. And I'm not either, which is, it's good to be creating stuff with people who are all on the same page, and I'm glad that we're all in the same spot. We don't, like the first time this Johnny kick in, where we talked about our feelings, and that's kind of a funny thing because, most people want to jam right away. And I feel like I want to be friends with these people before making music, just like a relationship, you don't want to date somebody just because the sex is good. You need to build a rapport with them. You need to know that they're your best friend. You need to know that for the periods where you're not, just fooling around and having a great time all the time, you still love each other. And that's the importance here, is that you have to be with a great group of people or it's not going to work. And so I couldn't have found a better group of people, and I'm really blessed. I'm really lucky. Stars have aligned in a way that hasn't been convenient. It's not always the easiest, but at the same time, I've met people like Sam and Summer along the way. I've met people like Travis Preston, Dominic Vitucci, Tyler Denig, and it's like, I was meant to have all these people in my orbit, and like that's what the Neti Collective is kind of about too. I don't like booking people who, there are artists I know around here who are really talented, really good people, but it's about the money. It's about kind of motivation that isn't my favorite reason to approach music. And so the people I book, I will book people who are garage rock acts. I'll book people, like I said, who I will find in the Diag and who are very intriguing, weird people. But I like that because they're not, expecting to make money. Like Dharma Hardis Sattva, that guy gives out 8 gig flash drives full of his music for free, not asking for a penny. And that's the kind of devotion I like to see because, I don't think at the end of the day, getting an extra $2 for your art, is going to leave the best impression, which is why it's funny when you see some of these older, I hate to even say fossils, but some of the older generations of musicians, like you've got Metallica, who will sue anybody for anything because they're so upset about the idea that somebody might actually download a song of theirs for free. It bothers them so much. Whereas you have people like Neil Young who say, or Nine Inch Nails as well, I guess I'll bring up, who say, I don't care if you pirate my music, please just listen to the full album. Please just listen to the music after you steal it because I want to know that you're at least enjoying it and becoming spiritually fulfilled. And so, yeah, not to run on this long tangent, but that's all I care about at the end of the day is, I'm going to starve for this. I know that, and I'm okay with that. But it's not easy to find other people who are willing to do that as well. And so if you find people who are also willing to kind of be in the trenches with you, I think that's a really important thing. And that's why some of my favorite groups down here are the same way. I really like the After Hours Radio type people, and Sig Butts, people like that who just like they'll do a million shows, and most of them aren't paid, but it doesn't matter to them because they love doing it for the sake of doing the music, and I really love that. So, yeah.
It's definitely a tough balance if you're trying to balance the art with trying to make ends meet, and that's always a really difficult thing. But I think that there isn't quite as much like glamour or myth around like, oh, I'm gonna like be in this band and it's gonna like make me all this money. Like I think that like the myth of that has kind of been stripped away. I mean, you look at even like, you know, really well established people in the music industry, like Steve Albini, for instance, one of my all-time favorite producers, big influence on me in terms of not only his approach in the studio, but also like treating artists and bands fairly and squarely from a financial perspective. Like he's been really influential on me, but when I hear him talk, he's like, you know, like I don't really do music as a job. I've made over 1,000 records as a producer, but like I'm totally content with working outside of music 40 hours a week so that I can support doing this music.
What does he work doing 40 hours a week outside?
Well, he has claimed that he's made more money gambling than he has through.
He also doesn't claim. He's one of the few engineers who doesn't claim royalty credits, which is cool. Like I mean, like I don't know offense to anyone who does, but it's like he made I think it was in Sonic Highways. He was talking about that. He said, "I did one job for you one time. Why would I want to put my hand in the pot of your money for eternity?" That's kind of shitty.
I had no idea.
Yeah, wait, I mean most producers will collect royalties, and that's sort of a standard
I've never
thing,
heard
but
of
he
anyone
is, you know, really ethically opposed to that. And actually, John Congleton has a similar approach, and it was influenced through his mentorship with Steve Albini.
That would make sense.
Two of my favorite producers, shout out.
John Congleton. I will keep emailing you every year, once a year.
Yeah, Summer has emailed John Congleton once a year for like 6 years now, being like, hey, can I intern at your studio?
Please?
I won't take up too much space.
Please, John Congleton?
I just want to like...
I'm still waiting.
Learn from you.
He answered one time and was like, no, but you're nice. Come in if you're ever in town. Anyway,
so you're talking about like
this is
chemistry,
about me, not your personal wishes.
Chemistry is like really important in a band.
Chemistry is so important.
Being on the same page, coming from similar spots.
And I feel like most people don't even think about that at all when they're forming a band.
Yeah, you're
it's
just like, oh, you're good at drums, like you can play, and then it was totally mismatching, or you're not like, you know, have different intentions or whatever.
Yeah. And not talking about future goals until one person's mad or something. And I feel like being on the same page as the people you're playing with is like emotionally and friendship wise is a totally different goal, but essential to actually putting out.
When y'all live together, you know, it's like y'all live together. MC5, they live together. The Stooges, they live together. I mentioned these guys because they're from Ann Arbor, but it's like that is kind of a thing, you know. They're like bands that are families first and artists second. And you don't have to do it forever, you know. Obviously, at a certain point, you're gonna want to break off, do your own thing. You get older, you want to have a family, live on your own. You don't want to live with these smelly dudes forever, you know.
Or
it's like,
do you?
Sometimes maybe, but it's like, you know, that's why I like the fact my drummer likes the Chili Peppers, you know, because that's a band that they dealt with so much bullshit from each other that, you know, they kind of have to like each other at the end of the day, or else they would not have done what they did. And I feel like at a certain point, if you're touring and that sort of thing, people don't really give much thought to like what touring is if they're not in music themselves. Like casual fans think, well, that's a lot of time on the road, whatever, but that's fun. It's like, no, you were literally living in the closest proximity, more so than a house. And that's
when Sam and I were on tour, I think we were outside of the same room of each other for 10 hours at the most for a month, because there was one place
maybe
we,
not like
well,
we had our one room
night that we
had
slept
our
in different
room,
rooms. There was one night that we slept in different rooms,
but it was also
not even 10 hours,
like
probably,
if I ever had a
hours.
question or a problem about something, like it was either solve it myself or I have this one other person that I know that might be able to help me out. So like if I'm like mildly pissed about something frivolous, I like gotta pick my battles about it and like not let the little things upset me, because it's just going to be too long in close proximity. Yeah,
it's a tough thing to manage. I mean, like I like the fact that, you know, like my drummer went to go see, he never seen my house before, and I'm moving out in a month, so he's like, can I see your place? When he dropped me off at like 3 a.m. last night at my house, so I'm like, yeah, come in. And like we ended up like sitting there till 7 a.m. just talking still, and that's like the kind of thing that I want out of somebody. And it's like you know, I keep bringing this back to relationships, but it's like that girl you want to talk to like till 7 a.m. on the phone, you know. It's like, it's the same thing. Like if you don't have that, then it's like you have to kind of step back and like wonder what the problem is here. And just in this scenario, dude makes me laugh. Dude makes you question a lot of my values on a daily basis. And I like both of those things, because someone to keep you in check and someone to keep your head up when you're really sad or upset is really important, because it's the best of both worlds. You need someone to keep you serious when it matters, and someone to keep you happy when it's not easy to be happy. And that's, so that chemistry is so hard. And yeah, it's hard to like obtain that like casually.
I imagine that there is a unique need for that chemistry, and like a very specific type of chemistry when you describe your process, because you coming in and adding melodic arc or lyrics and vocal performance into like a somewhat formed instrumental entity, that requires a ton of trust that they're going to do something that you can vibe off of.
Yeah,
and is close to like what your vision is, as a dare I say front man.
Yeah, and I'd say both ways, because they have to trust that they've worked on this thing all the way up to 80%.
That I'm not going to fuck up, it's like...
You want to do something then.
Yeah, and that is a fear. I am a little bit, I do get a little bit scared. Like, am I going to like compromise this thing that they might have thought of as this beautiful thing in their minds? And, it's like you have to... Yeah, it goes both ways, where, if they build something up to the 80% mark that I don't feel comfortable laying the 20% on at the end, like I didn't like it, that'd be tough, whereas, if they don't like what I do for the last 20%, that's tough too. And so there's like, I think people think that to be like a front person who doesn't play another instrument is easy, because you don't have this thing in your hands while you're trying to sing. It's actually harder, because you're now looked at as like this ego, where if you like don't take advantage of that to the full capacity and own it, you're doing the band a disservice, because why are you at the front if you're not going to take advantage of that spotlight? And two, it's like you have a lot of power, and if you take that and you act like a dick and you are arrogant, you can really do a lot to discredit a lot of the work that the other people around you have been doing. Chris says it in a way that I really like, where he says, we're creating a cloud for you to float upon. And I like that, because like I'm the one standing on the cloud, and it makes it sound like they're servants in a way, but at the same time, if they weren't kind enough to make that goddamn cloud appear, I would have nothing to stand it on, and I'm falling into an abyss, as a singer. So it's like, it is a completely mutually beneficial agreement in place. And I'm not a singer because I think I'm like, I don't know, I'm not hot shit trying to be at the front. It's just called, I can only do that thing. It is the thing that I feel most comfortable doing, and I think down the road I would love to become fluent in playing a guitar or piano to write songs, but at the end of the day, I just want to focus on this one thing, because like any other instrumentalist, when you have that one thing in your hands or at your disposal, you're going to be great at it. And if you're trying to multitask, not that you can't be great at both at the same time, but there's a reason that even though Mick Jagger can play a guitar and a piano, he doesn't do it while he sings, because it's going to take away from some of the psychic energy he's putting into his craft, which is, his chicken dance, strut thing that he does, and it's like, I don't know what that thing is he does, but he probably couldn't do it half as well if he had a guitar in his hands. And there are videos of him with a guitar in his hands, and he does not do it as well. So it's, like I said, it has to be, everyone has to be equally involved, and it doesn't matter. It's, even with people look at rap groups and they assume that it's all the MCs or it's all the DJ, and even then it's like, that though if those guys aren't in sync, it's the same thing. If any of you guys like music documentaries, you should really watch Beats, Rhymes, and Life. It's about a tribe called Quest, probably one of the better late 80s, early 90s hip hop groups out there, like Q-Tip, Phife Dawg.
One of my favorite groups of musicians probably ever.
So good. And it's like those guys had a lot of chemistry, and it was tense sometimes. When the chemistry worked, it was great, and when it didn't work, things went to shit and they had to break up. But it was because it was like a love or hate thing. And most great groups don't work consistently forever, because that's just not how that kind of emotion works.
I mean, it's amazing to me that a lot of groups work for 20 years before that, or even 10 years. That's like a long that is, like you said, a relationship, and it's not usually with one person. It's a relationship with
your artistic goals
people.
And like what you want to accomplish and the things that are in your headspace and what you're thinking about and what you want to project onto your art. It's constantly evolving based on how you're interacting with your day-to-day life and the world around you. And that can't possibly stay the same exactly with another person or a combination and group of other people forever. That's
Yeah.
It's not gonna.
Beatles got 6 years, and most of it was the Beatles literally had 6 years, and like they had been playing together, they've been doing a lot of other stuff, but like their recording output only lasted 6 years, and that was the most.
Years.
Yeah, and it was a ton of music too.
Yeah, so
They did things
that.
a little differently back in the day. We should maybe take a page out of their
They're
book
prolific.
and have our
Record,
output be a little quicker.
Record. But then, what did they just? Well, they also didn't have to.
They did
the other
not
things
play
they
a
didn't-
concert live
They didn't-
after 1966.
That's
so the
fair.
last
Uh-huh.
like 3.5 years, it was all studio.
All output, yeah. But also, when they did play concerts and plan tours and everything, they didn't have to do that. They had major labels behind them that were doing all of the
This is fair.
all of the groundwork for them. You
And
know?
they still could only
being
stay together
the-
6 years. Can you imagine how short-lived they would have been had they had to do everything themselves?
Oh my
It's like-
god, yeah.
they would have like probably broken up in 3. Like I don't know. Maybe they would have been like a Sex Pistols type thing. They would have lasted a year. You know, who knows? But I just like it's important to remember that everybody should at least have an equal involvement. You know, and I think that some bands maybe there's some weird bands in history. Like Bon Jovi's an example where like that band had a lot of issues, and at one point John Bon Jovi basically fired everybody and went solo for 2 years by himself, proved he could still sell 1 million albums by himself if he wanted to, looked at them and said, I will offer you jobs as my bandmates, had them sign contracts, and they are working for Bon Jovi essentially now. And that's a really weird thing because he tried to do it the family route and it worked to a certain extent, and then he went, this is too much work. I'm doing everything, so I'm going to treat you guys like employees instead. And that's worked for them, you know? So it's like not for everybody, obviously, and I don't think everybody want to be under one dude's name while he manages them and like does everything. But at the same time, like, you know, that's kind of one of the situations where it didn't work doing the family thing. So it's like he had to kind of take the reins like that. They also have Iron Maiden, which is a cool fucking band because the lead singer, he flies the jet plane that the band tours around the world in. He is a pilot. Like there's an Iron Maiden fucking like jetliner that like lands in airports and it has the Iron Maiden logo on the side, and it's not some other dude flying. It's the lead singer, and he had
It's gotta be so tiring. He goes and plays a show and then flies to the next place. Like
he had cancer too. He had like
Oh my
tongue
God.
cancer. Like it's just, you know. So then
We
there are
need
people.
to step up our game. a little
yeah,
bit.
I mean we were driving from place to place, but already complaining about that. We needed to fly.
Oh shit! I
I don't know
saw.
what's harder though. Actually,
Well, flying
would take less time.
is-
Don't fly. You'll die. You guys will die. Like everyone dies flying. Like it's just you know too many.
I will wait until after I turn 28 to start flying,
Yeah,
so I
Yeah,
can just
let's
avoid
the
that
club.
infamous 27 club at all costs.
but that's never. Well, no. Did someone die in an airplane?
Stevie Ray Vaughan died in a
Stevie Ray
plane
Vaughan,
crash.
Patsy Cline, Otis
The-
Redding,
Yeah,
Lynyrd
the whole
Skynyrd.
Don Henley Day the Music Died was about
Wait, all of
Buddy
them in
Holly
airplanes?
and who were the other musicians?
Wow, I
Like,
just
they
Buddy
all died in a
Holly.
plane crash.
Yeah, Patsy, Otis, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Buddy Holly.
I forgot about Skinner.
Stevie Ray
Yeah, half
Vaughan.
of their band died in a plane crash.
Wow.
Fuck, there's
I
like,
like flying.
there are
though.
more. There are
No.
more. Well, here's the thing. This is the problem with their smaller aircrafts.
Right.
And they
You
do
gotta
it's like
fly
a pond hop.
commercial.
Yeah, you gotta fly commercial like a total asshole. Like, can't cheap out on that front. But I'm like, the one thing I am jealous of though, of people who aren't in a band dynamic, is like people who can do everything themselves, and not to be ego serving, but in a way that they can kind of like create the initial product themselves and then go on a tour with a band. So they're kind of like having other people fill in the gaps. Where like, I think good examples of this kind of currently, Nine Inch Nails has always done that. That's a thing. And then like, and I like the removal of the ego. That's kind of cool. So it's not Trent Reznor, even though it is just Trent Reznor. But Nine Inch Nails does that. You know, Mac DeMarco essentially does that. He records most of it by himself in the studio and does overdubs. And then
He
Grimes.
plays like everything, doesn't he?
Yeah.
in his recording.
Grimes is my favorite. Grimes, that blows my mind. Like, she can do so much shit by herself in the studio. And I think hers comes from kind of like more of a political standpoint at this point, because she's been so sick of like men in the recording industry telling her how they can help her career and make it better. And
Yeah,
make
well,
her
you know,
sound this way.
the sound engineer world and the audio production world is so dominated by males to a disgusting rate. And like Grimes is
Live
an
sound
incredibly
is more
talented
than-
producer.
I
Live
think
sound,
Live
too,
sound
yeah.
is more than any other world I've ever seen ever.
But Grimes' music is, you know, there's so much going on with arrangement and production, and that's like all her. She's like, no, you can't help me with this because I know what I want and I'm going to make it.
Well,
and if you come in,
yeah.
it's going to step on my toes creatively. And that's like, you have to be so multi-talented to be able to do that and create it from the ground up and do the composing and the arranging and the engineering and the production.
Well, especially the engineering. That's something like most, like the producing, that's a lot of artists are producing, but like the engineering is where I'm really impressed, because that means she is like an audio student. She knows about the fine detailing, which is crazy. You know, like Visions, like that album, that's made in GarageBand entirely. Even if you don't like Grimes, you can listen to that album and know that it's still, technically speaking, like it's not like, there are a lot of professionally produced and engineered albums that are done with like Pro Tools that don't sound that good, you know. So it's a great feat, you know, especially for someone so young too. Like, that's insane. There's just so many things about it that are great, and I think that this Art Angels album, everybody shits on it so much. It is like, people love or hate it, and I get really irritated with this because it is a pop album for sure, and I will not deny. I know that more than anybody, but like this is an album I will tell everybody to listen to, because I've been listening to it for like almost a year now. I think it came out last October, and it, sound-wise, it is so intricate. I read an article recently, it was for Ableton, I think. She did an interview, and she's talking about how one song she mixed together the 808 drums in like dentist drills to make a very particular drum sound on, I think, the song Venus Fly. And that's the kind of creativity that like most people aren't going to get out of like some professional producer who wants to pump out album upon album to meet a deadline and make his paycheck and leave, you know. And
well, especially in the pop realm, they're trying to they're trying to make it as digestible, and that means things that you've heard before, because that's what you're familiar with.
Yeah, and it's great because she knew that she wanted to do weird shit. That's the kind of things that...
Well, she was able to do it within this package that had that pop production sheen around it. So it sounds like a pop record. Yeah. It's really maximal and really crystal clear, but it has all of these kind of arrangement things happening that are, you know, a little left of center, especially for pop.
It explores different styles. It has like these crazy engineering feats going on that like that. The album too, it's like it explores a lot of, you know, concepts. You know, she always had like kind of a dark, kind of eerie subject matter on the other albums, and it was a little more like poetic and stoic. Whereas this is like the first album where she got really like political about like feminism and like gender equality and all that kind of thing. And it's great. And I think when people dismiss it as a pop record, it's really shitty and kind of sexist, because it's like, here's another girl doing a pop record. And it's like, no, like, listen, the shit she's talking about is really important. And it's, you know, and the visuals to go along with it are incredible, but it's one of the best albums I've heard in a long time. And I listen to a lot of music. Like I'm like, and I say that because I listen to a vast array of stuff, and I feel like if my selection are pretty minimal, maybe people would doubt me on this, but like I love everything, you know. I like everything from like the 1940s on. So this isn't me saying it because I
1940s, not so into it.
Not into it. Yeah, some 1940s weren't everybody's favorite time. But like I said, I love so much music that for this to stand out to me, like I feel like I can vouch for this being of quality. And maybe that sounds a little arrogant, but like I said, there are not a lot of albums that come around that are like this, and I really hope that people don't just write her off, because I swear to God, if like the Black Keys or Arctic Monkeys, whoever, get, you know, another like high praise for some okay album, like, you know, it's just, that's the kind of shit I don't like. Like, it seems like when women in the music industry take risks, it's kind of like shat upon, and I feel like if they're not putting themselves into this cutesy singer-songwriter category, then people don't take it seriously, which is why I like some more avant-garde people like Grimes, or, you know, Tao and the Get Down Stay Down, or Tune Yards, and you like them because it's like it's women who don't just want to do the shit that men want them to do to sell records. It's like, you know, and there's nothing wrong with, you know, like the Fifth Harmonies and things like that of the world, you know, that they're great as well, you know, but at the same time, like, people who challenge that status quo are going to do a lot more for the progression of women's place in rock and roll than people who aren't doing it, you know. And so it is important to have women who are producing themselves, engineering themselves, and like picking out their own musicians on tour. Like St. Vincent is another great example, because she designed with Ernie Ball her own like guitar that she calls female centric, because her joke is that it has room for a breast or two. That's what she said. And people were shitting on this thing, and it's like, but I don't understand, because she is a woman designing a guitar out of her own experiences as a female guitarist to better accommodate the needs of female guitarists for a younger generation of girls, and that's really that's more than I think most people can say about what they've done. I don't see a lot of dudes making guitars that are pushing any boundaries or doing anything new. And so it's weird when anytime a woman tries to do anything new or like creative in music, people just like go ape shit about it, and I do not understand that. And then people wonder why there's this desire for female pop music more than ever. It's like, well, you can't shit on the women for wanting to do new stuff and then wonder why they're not doing new stuff. It's like, well, we need to embrace it a little more. And I think that, like I said, the St. Vincent guitar, I think Art Angels, these things are really important, and I wish people recognize that. Same with like Casey Musgraves doing country music about, smoking pot and not wanting to be a pageant girl and, accepting LGBT individuals in country music. Like, these are really important things, and like women are doing a lot of great shit in music. And so I'm sick of hearing about, the Black Keys and, Bruno Mars, people who are like kind of doing the same shit over and over again when you have this, I don't know, it's like, and I don't mean to sound like a white knight, but it's like, it's time for people to put recognition to where it counts. And I feel like that really starts with some of these people. But yeah. Just sorry.
I think I had a really strange experience at the Pitchfork Music Festival. I believe it was 2 Julys ago, where I was watching it. And I just happened to notice between the performers that like a lot of the female musicians had really elaborate performance setups and were doing all these crazy things. Grimes, for example, played that, as did St. Vincent. And Grimes had this huge setup where she had instruments scattered all around the stage, and she had to run back and forth to trigger all these different things and play all these things, and it was very, very physical. She spread these things out across the stage, so she like had to run and do all these things. And by contrast, I just noticed that like a lot of the male performers were like singing into a mic and pushing play and on a laptop. And it's not that that style can't be, like that type of performance can't be effective, because Schoolboy Q played that weekend and it was that exact format, and he was an incredible performer and made it work. But I couldn't help but feel like there was this discrepancy in like just the women performers were doing more, but I couldn't help but think like if they did the exact same thing, if there'd be a bias, like the women performers had to do more with the performance to get just to be on the same perceptive
just to get that little amount of credit.
It was a very strange, sobering experience for me, having all of those performers kind of play in a bubble. Well,
Grimes created the first I don't want to speak entirely, but one of the first ever like virtual reality like interactive music experiences that like debuted at like Moogfest this year. And like I didn't hear about that shit from any of the guy performers, but it's like that's the kind of stuff like they have to get, like it almost feels like Sam was saying, women have to go above and beyond just to get the same amount of credit as the guys get for doing the bare minimum. And I don't understand that at all. It's like, it's just why I like people like the Erykah Badu's and Bjorks of the world, who people know are fucking incredible and nobody questions them at all. And I really wish that people didn't have to be at that level just to get that credit, because it's not about thinking that like women just deserve more credit all the time. I just want women to get the same fucking treatment. I want women to get the same credit for the same shit. And I feel like this is a thing with a lot of, it's weird too, because when anyone does anything slightly socially intriguing in music, like the band Against Me, they've been around forever, and they've been getting more attention in the last 2 years just because the lead singer transitioned from a man to a woman. And as someone who's like sort of in the stages of this kind of thing myself, like I love that, and I love that there's a positive outpouring of support for this musician, but I don't like how that is the reason for people giving the music credit. And I want it to be like Transgender Dysphoria Blues is a great album, so therefore people should praise it like it's a great album. I don't want it to be like, this is a great album because of this political reason. Like, that's shitty, and I think it's a little condescending and like patronizing, because what if that album was written while Laura Jane Grace was still Tom Gable? Would the album still have received the same commercial acclaim. And I just wish that great music is recognized as being great music. And I feel like it's weird that we're still at a place where like gender and race and all these sorts of things are still such a place of emphasis for like whether or not we recognize someone as being great or not. And it's stupid. I hate
People like
it.
to pay attention for the awe of the possibility of
It's difficult because that album is
different than what they understand, I think.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
I mean, I Kissed a Girl was like a huge song, I think, because of...
that was like not at all authentic. That was like, hey, look at me, I'm trying to get attention, kind of I Kissed a Girl.
Right.
It was... but I mean, it's tricky because that album is super, super important because it paints a picture in a public light. You know, it's very, it's sort of trailblazing. You know, we talk about, Caitlyn Jenner being the first on magazine covers. Was that last summer that
something like that? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And so it's, kind of an issue that's, getting public and public perception. A lot right now. And it's really difficult to look at that album outside of its context because, that transition like really informed the content and the lyrics of the album and what made it so powerful. But at the same time, it's not the only thing. Like, if you stripped that context away, you still have a fucking killer album, and it's important to like say that it isn't an amazing piece of art because of the content, but the content that informs it is, inherently a part of what makes it great.
I feel the same way about like Kendrick Lamar too in regards to like race. I feel like To Pimp a Butterfly is an amazing album, but I'm wondering if the Black Lives Matter movement hadn't resonated so strongly among like younger non-black millennials, would that album have been as popular given the themes and things that were going on in the album? Like if we weren't aware of that kind of shit that was going on in communities that we aren't personally living in, would most of these kids have cared about the album as much, even though it's a great album? And that's tough because on one hand, I'm glad that these movements, these socially progressive movements are shedding light on these great artists, but I wish that these great artists and their issues that they experienced and had to deal with were recognized just as experiences as people. I wish you didn't have to go, this is a trans album or this is a black album. It's like, I wish people would just go, this is good music. It's like when you hear a lot of older stuff, I feel like this is why I like old music, because I don't have the context of knowing what it was like to grow up in that time. So I don't listen to Marvin Gaye's What's Going On and think this is how black people specifically felt after, like, when Vietnam was like wrapping up. I hear it and I go, this is like about a country in dissolution in general after Vietnam was wrapping up. And there is this emphasis on the black community, but I don't look at it like this is a black album and I can't appreciate it the same way because I'm white. I think music needs to be left a little more universal in some scenarios, or else people who don't care about those social issues aren't going to want to care and listen to it the same way. And I think that's a thing where a lot of people look at, I don't know, if they don't care about the social issues at hand, they won't listen to these albums because they go, oh, this is just someone like protesting or trying to make a point and I don't want to be preached to. And it's stupid. It's like people who don't care. It's like I know people who aren't environmentalists necessarily, like to a great degree, shitting in the movie Avatar because they feel like you're being preached to or Wall-E'd. And that's the dumbest thing because these are good movies, It's just like they're fun to watch. And it's like people, because there's some sort of slight social agenda that's being expressed through the personal lens of the creator, like people get really weird about that because our society puts everybody into these categories where it's like, I feel like people shouldn't be like, these are trans issues, these are black issues, these are feminist issues. It's like, these are human issues, and these humans happen to be black and trans and female. And this isn't to say like all lives matter. Obviously black lives matter, trans lives matter, women's lives matter. But like, I think that people need to just be more empathetic in general and not feel like they're devoting themselves to one cause or another, or, at different times. I feel like the marginalized groups should be able to look to each other for support and not feel like we're hoping that people who don't identify with us are going to give us their absolute attention one at a time. It's like, I feel like I said, everything has to be made. There's like a point that has to be made about all this music. And it's like Beyonce too, this Lemonade album. There's some really cool feminist themes that go on there. There's some really cool like Black Lives Matter related themes that go on there. But I wish people just listen to the album and go, this is Beyonce's experience as a black female in America, and not go, this is a Black Lives Matter thing, because there's all this bullshit controversy over like the Formation video and all that, and it's like, I don't know, I just think that people should be allowed to express themselves without being like shamed for it. I think that, you know, everybody should have their 5 minutes to say what they want to say, and that it shouldn't be used to define them permanently.
What's the controversy going? I don't know.
There was a controversy. Basically, everyone who was basically there was.
Well, first of all, you should do it because it's an incredible experience.
I know.
The visual aspect is amazing.
Soon.
I think musically, 4 is still my favorite Beyonce album, but this one is has a ton of really great content, and also just like a variety of genres. There's like one like total like country hoedown vibe that's really cool. I don't know.
She's a song with Jack White. She's one with like.
But the music, like the whole visual aspect. There's a song where Serena Williams twerks. It's pretty amazing. You should check that out.
All right.
And it's like I think people. It's weird because when the majority isn't being catered to, then all of a sudden people either go with the social minority that's being represented in these kinds of movements, and they support it, and they understand they're an ally, and that this isn't about them, and they get it, or they get pissed off and like show irritation with it because they can't personally relate, so they feel offended by it. And then it's like there's an SNL skit about this Formation video because she's talking about a lot of stuff that pertain mostly to black culture that a lot of white people don't get, and that's fine because Beyonce's black, like no shit, like. But there was an SNL skit called like the day that white people realized Beyonce was black, and it's hilarious because everyone's losing their shit, and these two black guys are like, what's going on? And one says, oh, the new Beyonce video, and he's like, oh, okay, yeah, I understand now. And people are like, this isn't made for us, everything is made for us, how come we can't relate? And it's like, and that's the thing, people either get it and they go, okay, cool, I get it, like it must suck to be like deal with like being a black citizen in this country and being pulled over for really stupid shit and being scared for your life. And other people go, well, this is bullshit, you know, why aren't you making Crazy in Love, why aren't you doing this, why aren't you doing that? Like, I want to have my dance anthems back. It's like, it's not about you. It's like, this is a human being. This artist isn't like someone who just exists to make shit for you, you know, from the moment they get up from the time they go to bed. It's like, they are a human being. They are allowed to express themselves. And I think,
yeah, they have the right to make the content that's important to them personally. It doesn't really matter. Yeah,
like a lot of Against Me fans have abandoned Against Me because they're like, well, I don't want to listen to an album about you wanting to dress up as a girl. That doesn't matter to me. And it's like, and if they were real punks, if they're really about the spirit of the DIY, I think they'd understand that it's about being an outsider, you know? So I feel like people who understand, and the people who don't, you know, they're casual listeners, and that's fine. They want something to dance to, and there will be something else for them on the radio. There will be a new Uptown Funk or whatever for them to enjoy.
There will always be a top 40 anthem waiting for anyone who wants to flee from any kind of different artist.
And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Like, to a certain extent, we need some frivolous things to consume in light of all of the heavy shit that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So there's nothing wrong with going and listening to an Uptown Funk or whatever.
If One Direction makes you happy, that's cool.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad it makes you happy.
It's like, even on these albums, it's like, whether it be Lemonade or Art Angels or Transgender Dysphoria Blues, there's plenty of like songs that are like just listenable. They're pretty lighthearted, and so people, instead of looking at that and being like, oh, these songs I can dance to normally, they get so upset about the songs that question their social values in the slightest sense. And it's like, well, are they an artist then if they don't do that? Like, my thought is, if you make too many albums without really pissing anybody off or making anybody question anything, then you might not be, I mean, not that you're not an artist, but you're not following through on the promise that you made and wanting to express yourself to the umpteenth degree. And I feel like, you know, Beyonce making a video where she's sitting on a cop car going underwater in New Orleans, like, that is very controversial. But at the same time, like, we kind of let, you know, like, obviously we couldn't prevent a hurricane, but at the same time, the precautions we took before Hurricane Katrina were not the most thought out, and we have a responsibility in that we need to be accountable for that. And, you know, so for her to have that imagery in her video, we can't be mad because it's accurate. You know, we can feel a little guilty and feel a little shitty. We can't just shit on her for wanting to speak up about something that's shitty, you know? And I'm not even the biggest Beyonce fan, but I still think at the end of the day, that is the more admirable path to take, you know? Just like, yeah, I don't know. It's it's just so weird. People get so offended so easily. You know, it's not even just a message. Sound too. When an artist changes their sound and people lose their shit.
Oh, that's a huge thing. I mean,
That's
Did you
such a huge
guys
thing.
see the Miles Davis movie
no,
with
I
Don
haven't.
Cheadle?
I wanted to see it so bad.
There's a really great part where he's doing like a record signing at a store, and some guy comes up and he has like all of Miles Davis's older records, and he's like, oh, you want me to sign these old records from like 10 years ago? And he's like, well, yeah, like I like am absolutely in love with you, Miles, but to be like completely honest, I don't really get like the new records. I just don't really get it. Like, I really love the old stuff. And Miles is like, well, do you want me to wait for you to catch up? Like, no, I'm going to be like, I can't help the fact that people are like still chewing over the stuff that I did 10 years ago. I have to follow my own path and do what's interesting me and what's stimulating me in the moment. And if, you know, people are a few years behind, they're a few years behind, whatever.
And I mean, it's fine for you to be like, I love this artist, and then this new album comes out, they change their sound, and it doesn't hit you as strongly. I mean, that's just like, you know, your reaction. But when people get upset at that artist for changing their sound, it's like they're a person exploring, you know, they're exploring their craft, and for them to just try to keep putting out the same sound, it wouldn't.
And it's
make
totally fair
sense
to
at
question
all.
the motives of why they changed the sound. You know,
Sure.
You know, if it's, you know, if they're selling out, so to speak, or something like that. You know, that's something that's fair to speculate on or talk about or question. But often, yeah, it's really unfair to just shit on an artist because they made something that you don't like personally, you know, relative to something else that they made.
It's funny. Examples of this always, whenever I try to like think of examples, I always end up going to these pop punk artists, which is hilarious because people shit on me for it and like, why couldn't you pick a better band? But my point exactly is that some of these bands try to not be a Vans Warped Tour, a typical pop punk band, and people will like shit on them for trying to change, and then in retrospect like, oh, that was some shitty pop punk band. It's like, well, people stop buying the records because they didn't want to be a pop punk band, but you know, then it's like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Like, either you want them to, like, when I think about this, I think of like, I'll think of like Fall Out Boy, I'll think of My Chemical Romance, Panic at the Disco, and these are all bands that played their instruments really well. Most of us like these bands, and I think now in retrospect, we're like, oh god, like the Panic at the Disco, like fuck that. And it's like, no, like we all liked this quote shitty unquote music, and the problem is that it wasn't really all that shitty, you know. My Chemical Romance tries to go operatic, and they try to do something a little more sophisticated, and people get mad, and they stop buying their shit, and then they break up, and then people wonder why that is. And it's like, well, if you can't be a shitty fan, and then they break up and then laugh at them like there's some pop punk extravaganza, that's not how it works. It's like, it's a collective effort of people to run these bands out of business, basically. And, you know, Panic at the Disco, they had a weird follow-up to their really popular album where they did like this Baroque pop Beatles-esque Pet Sounds kind of thing, and it's pretty interesting. And I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's a really solid effort at doing something
completely
else.
different from like the cabaret punk that's happening on the first album. It's a total left turn.
What's the name of the most recent album? Made me mad.
The most recent album?
Yeah.
Uh-oh, I don't remember.
I just know it was Fever You Can't Sweat was the first, and the second was Pretty Odd.
Yeah.
The most recent one is like straight up a pop, like radio pop album, and it's called something like, here, you want to look it up? It's called something like Bringing Back Rock, or like, it's like
that's the new Fall Out.
I'm talking about Fall Out Boy.
Second newest Fall Out Boy is called Save Rock and Roll.
Save Rock and Roll. That made me mad.
That album was very poppy.
Yeah, it's not rock and roll. Don't call it Save Rock and Roll. First of all, you're implying that rock and roll is dead.
Well, Patrick Stump had that solo album called
and
Soul
roll
Punk,
is
but it
not
might as
dead.
well have been called pop.
Right. They just keep calling things that are pop other things. You can't do that.
I mean, that's a
You could
we also
call it
have a Rock and
whatever
Roll
you
Hall
want.
of Fame that has enough hip hop artists at this point to rival the amount of rock artists in it. So it's weird. Like, rock and roll is such a general. Is it spirit of rock and roll?
Is it a
like,
genre? Or is it like an attitude?
But either way, I guess it's kind of incorrect because I don't know if there's anything like that rebellious about that album by Fall Out Boy.
yeah, I feel like either way it's incorrect. That was a straight up pop radio album, and so not rebellious. And then it was straight up pop, so not rock.
That's fair.
I don't know. I just didn't like that. I don't like that name. I don't Save Rock and Roll.
I'm not trying to bash too many artists because I feel like we were just on a
I
train
love
of
Fall Out
like,
Boy.
oh man,
I
it
still
sucks
stand
that
by
people
Fall Out
bash
Boy.
these artists.
I
Fall Out
stand
Boy's
by their
great live. You know?
Yeah,
Like,
I've
you
seen
should go
them
see
live
They're
twice.
amazing.
It was very fun, but I don't like that name for the new album.
No,
I
that's
don't mind
fair.
about what the music. I'm just saying the name. It's
name
condescending
is
towards rock
ill-fitting.
and rollers. Yeah.
It's kind of weird on the flip side of things, though, because you definitely have a mentality amongst fans where if a band stays with their sound for too long,
like,
that
they're
can be a
still doing
cause
that
for
thing.
concern. It's like, oh, they're a one-trick pony. They can't do anything
So
except for this
true.
one thing.
There's no really way to please people
You
other
have
than
to just
quit.
You have to be-
If you
if
quit-
you're not Radiohead, then quit.
Just intentionally, slowly enough. Do the Radiohead.
You basically have to be Radiohead. Radiohead's the only band that I've seen do that, where they can just like do whatever the fuck they want. And I think it's because their secret is they go so long between albums that people are just so desperate for a new album that they'll accept whatever it is. They don't question it.
Kid
Like,
A
it's-
is like considered a high watermark creatively now.
That also
but
pissed
when it-
off a lot of
But when it
fans.
came out, yeah, people were crazy. Like, what is this? There's no guitars on this album. This doesn't sound anything like Paranoid Android, which is,
We were
to be
talking
fair,
about
an amazing song. But they were doing their own thing, and a couple years time, people caught up to it and realized how masterful it was.
27 Club. I think that's the best way, unfortunately, to not be
To just die early.
Like all
That's
Nirvana
dark,
albums
man.
sound kind
I'm
of the same.
just
People don't
saying,
get that
no one
mad
gets
about
mad
it.
at it.
It's like
no one gets mad at
Just
you.
be
You're
thankful
forever-
that people are at a capacity where they can make art and share it with people and not get bummed out if it's not your favorite
Hey,
thing.
Slater Kinney's new album is my favorite of all their albums, but that's just me.
that's fair.
I think it's literally just me. No one else has
it's
said
the
that.
best
I've
production,
heard.
and it's arguably the best
I think it's the best
songwriting.
songwriting for sure. Their songwriting's like way better than
How come all these 27 Club people? A lot of them are like going in like cool directions when they died too, which sucks though, because like you have like Hendrix, who was actually trying to be like go into like funk and stuff, and like really grimy like.
He was doing stuff, all sorts of side projects outside of the Experience
It
trio.
was way beyond psychedelic music, and I would be really curious to hear that, because the
But
stuff.
what if you didn't like it? It would ruin your kind of.
See, I like Miles
thinking
Davis
about it,
on the
right?
Corner though, and I hear a lot of that in these Hendrix sessions. The last things like People, Hell, and Angels, I think is like what would have been the last Hendrix album. It came out like a year ago or a year or two ago, and those sound very similar. And so those two, I think, were rumored of wanting to work together. But I mean, Hendrix kind of ruined that by like fucking Miles Davis's wife. But at the same time though, like
I
you
didn't
can,
know that was a thing.
yeah, it's
soap opera
such a soap
in
opera.
music.
But it's like I think there are times where
Like
people
good
musically
taste.
progress, and there are times where they change in a way that fans don't like. Like I'm not gonna lie, like I liked Tame Impala's kind of neo psych stuff a lot better than I like this disco-y like dance floor kind of shit. It's not bad, but it's not my favorite. But I also like will give the next Tame Impala album a chance too.
Yeah, and I'm like glad that this album has done so well for them. It, a lot of people think it's really, really hot shit,
That one song
and I still
I'm
like
a
it, but
man,
it
woman.
doesn't hit me in an immediate way like
Like
Inner
that
Speaker does, for instance. That's probably my favorite Tame Impala album, but I'm like super stoked for them that they're getting all this attention
Yeah.
because they deserve it. They've been making good shit, and they've been evolving their sound over time.
Yeah. If you like people who like evolve, I like Ty Segall. He's my favorite because he just does whatever he wants, and like every album is like a different thing, and like he has different bands. He's got like Fuzz, which is like fuzz guitar. He's got this new band. I think it's called Gogs or something, and that's kind of like this weird like, really really, it's kind of like a, I don't know. It's like his other. It's garage rock, but not in the way his other shit is. And I like people like that who just make album after album. It's always different, and people don't really care. And I think Of Montreal is a pretty good example. They do stuff that's pretty typical indie pop. They do stuff that's a little more folky, like Sufjan Stevens style. They've done stuff that's like glam rock. They've done like Rolling Stones hard rock. Like they're kind of all over the board. And I like when people just don't. When you're at that indie range, you kind of have. Is this
Indie range, you kind of have.
Is this indica or sativa?
I don't
ask
know,
into
bro.
the mic.
What does that say?
It's
not
not
labeled.
Old. It's old.
Oh.
I will not take my chances, but I
Okay,
appreciate
fair.
that. That was really nonchalant.
I forget where you were. I'm sorry.
So it's okay. This is ranting about like bands not being able to please their
Ties
shitty
it all.
fans.
Ties
Yeah.
I actually wanted to pivot because
Pivot.
I would,
Yeah. Pivot.
I would consider because we had the opportunity of living together. I sort of got to pick your brain quite a bit.
Yeah.
I would consider you like a scholar of music, someone that has paid attention to a lot of different musical scenes and movements and styles over the years. And so
I wish I had girlfriends this nice, man. Keep it going.
when I think of you making music, I have a hard time pinning down like one specific genre that you might be, and probably some stuff comes out based on the natural tendencies of the musicians that you're playing with in the current project. But do you anticipate that there'll be certain styles of music that you'll have to branch out and take on with other projects, or do you think that you could assimilate all of those influences into one and sort of make it an eclectic thing?
I think that's a good question, because it's tough when you're like with other people, and I know you two. There's only two of you, and I know there's like great differentiation in what you guys like taste wise. So I mean, that's the guys I'm with. We have a pretty good grounded understanding and respect for most of the same things, and I think it falls largely under the category, as far as the things we all like, kind of fall under the category of alternative white boy guitar rock. But what you do with that is what's important. I think lyrically or like, melodically, I think it's like you can expand upon that a lot. But I think at the core of it, we're not going to be, there are a lot of white dudes in bands who can do like world genres or like stuff that's a little more like subtle, and I don't think we're that at all. And there are also some like engineer type perfectionists who can do some stuff like the My Bloody Valentines of the world, who will do this like insane studio crafted like shoegazy type thing, and but they're like, so somewhere between rock band and singer songwriter as far as like qualities go. And something I like stuff like Big Star, where it kind of borrows a lot from, it's as much about the culture that the people grew up in as much as like the musical aesthetic. And so like, there's a really good Big Star documentary, I think it's called like Nothing Can Hurt Me, and it's about, I think they're in Memphis. I want to say it was Memphis. And it's like a small, very typical American town in the 1970s. And you get that vibe in that music. And so I feel like when we make stuff, me and these guys, at least together, it's going to feel like a few guys in Midwestern America in this time period. And I feel like hopefully it'll be like, and funny when I say Midwestern, I feel like a lot of people think of us as being like really farmy and shit, like really folky. And the thing is that I feel like the Midwest is a lot rockier and cooler than a lot of people might think of on paper. I think of people thinking of being really hip and being really cool, you think of like West Coast or East Coast or that sort of thing. Or
Midwest doesn't get much love from like being. They just think of us as chilling.
But you got all sorts of stuff. You got Chicago, which is an amalgamation of so many different movements, whether it be blues or punk or house. And you got Detroit with the Motown, techno, all this sort of thing. You got Minneapolis with the Prince funk that emerged. Mm-hmm. We've obviously been talking a lot about Prince lately.
Yeah, like I think that Johnny's guitar, and Chris's drums, and my voice, we all come from fairly different places, but I think we're meeting in a pretty good middle ground in that Chris likes some funky shit. Chris likes really hard, funky drum fills and that sort of thing, and I respect that a lot. And I think one of Chris's biggest irritations is having to go slow. I think that's something he hates. Whereas I like singing. I don't like yelling. I like screaming. There are a lot of bands that do that kind of thing, and it's when guys aren't the best singers that they are willing to do that. And I think that because I've been a singer my whole life, I have a really hard time doing that because, one, it hurts my voice because it's not something I'd like to do. And it's just, I'm like, if I can sing, why the fuck am I not singing? And that's a thing. So, I might fuck with the technique a little bit here and there, but at the same time, I don't want to scream. I don't want to do talking. I don't want to, there's like Talking Heads are a good example of this, where David Byrne said in his like biography and all that himself that he never really felt like much of a singer until his solo career. So he did a lot more singing on his solo albums. But a lot of the Talking Heads albums, it's this, it's like this
an anxious, nervous kind of a chant.
Yeah, and it's like, thing, it's cool and I like it, but it's not me. And combining that with, and Chris loves the Chili Peppers, and there's a lot more kind of yelling and weird rapping type shit going on with the Chili Peppers than singing And and Johnny likes a lot of like I said, one of his favorite bands is like Radiohead, and so he likes the melody enough where I can kind of vibe with that, and I understand that. But it's gonna be hard, and at some point there's gonna be stuff I want to do that I'm gonna have to find other musicians to do, and I don't think it means I'm gonna find another band, and but at the same time, there is a thing I'm trying to work on with this other guitarist, like kind of like a country folk Americana type thing, because I know that'll bore the shit out of Chris. I know Johnny wants something that's a little more like upbeat and not so twangy, and like I respect that, but I love so many genres, and I love American styles the most, and I think it's because as a singer they complement me the best. Like I love a lot of really cool like experimental European styles, but I can't sing post-punk, I can't sing krautrock, I definitely, like minimal electronic, I have a voice, I can't do that. I'm not gonna be Kraftwerk, or anything like that, but I appreciate all that stuff, and if I can implement that in any way into what, that'll be implemented more into the band, I think. But stuff that I can just sing straight up. I love blues music, I love soul, I love gospel, like I love folk, country, like I love American art forms, like, that are, I guess, it's weird because we have this weird divide of like what's white and what's black in our roots as far as our culture goes, and in certain styles, and that's why I love Michigan, because there's a lot of really good like black music comes from Detroit and surrounding areas, like, and it's not even just Motown, like John Lee Hooker made it big in Detroit, and
the techno scene as well.
Yeah,
huge underground.
That's true. And there's a lot of that. Then I love all that stuff too, and like I can dance to techno a lot better than I could ever probably create it. But listen, I like being in places where there's not just one scene that's represented, and like I said, I love singing. I love singing to death, and it sucks because when I look to things like country music and that sort of thing, it's hard as someone who's got like gender identity issues and feels kind of, especially someone who's from the North, to look at these cool Southern rootsy styles and know that these people, a lot of people who made a lot of these things, were not the most tolerant of people like me back in the day, back in the 50s, or probably I'll say 40s through like the 70s. There are a lot of country singers, you got some cool exceptions. You've got Willie Nelson, you have Dolly Parton, people like that, who are really socially progressive and have always been pretty cool about like accepting outsiders, because they were outsiders. But not everyone is so cool with that, and it feels weird to want to do a genre where like 30 years ago had I wanted to, and still I don't know, if I wanted to make a country album, I'd have to sell it as a rock album, or else people might shit on it and might not be accepting of it, like, and there's some people doing that now, like Sturgill Simpson does country, like honky tonk country music, but he does it about like existentialism and psychedelics, so people classify him more as like a rock musician than as a country musician. You're not going to see him on like the Country Music Awards because it's just not going to fit. And like Casey Musgraves deals with the same thing because she's too socially progressive for the genre that kind of wants to go with the Make America Great Again kind of vibe. And that's really tough because...
yeah, it's a really interesting... that's specific to that genre, is it's not just a musical style, but also almost like a social culture that's implied with it that like... doesn't really necessarily have to be there. And as you're talking about all these musicians, there's actually these barriers are being broken down as like this mythological connection to the genre. It's not real.
No, exactly. And there's a really great country album called Lavender Country, which is, I believe it was made, I want to say late 60s, early 70s, as like a protest to like bigotry in the South. And it's a gay country album, and like they never went anywhere. The album sold 5 copies. It was like an independently pressed record, but it's really important because it was made and it does exist. And it's there's a song where one of the lines is like, "I'm still crying these cocksucker tears," and it's great because it's a reclamation of sorts towards a genre that isn't accepting of the people who are making it. And I think that group recently reunited and played a concert in protest of the North Carolina like bathroom bill recently, and that's something I really take a lot of joy in knowing, because the people cared enough about that album to reach out to this group of people and ask them to like reprise what they did 40 years ago for this new generation's cause. And it's sad that we still have these same issues. The fact that there needs to be a reunion of a Lavender Country type thing to like combat new social issues within the area that country music is most popular, that it sucks, but at least somebody's doing it. And I I feel a certain sort of discomfort with like a lot of hip hop and rap music, you know, because there's a lot of transphobia and homophobia in hip hop and rap still, and that sucks because that's a genre that like I really love, and there are some really progressive people like Wu-Tang Clan have been really good about. I don't know if you follow the news, but there was this Martin Shkreli asshole who bought out like the AIDS.
He's the slimiest.
Yeah, Pharma Bro, you know.
Yeah, he is. Did you watch him when he actually had to testify in front of?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, he's
They're just like,
normal.
do you feel bad about this? Like, don't you feel guilty? Don't you understand? Like, you're killing people. Don't you feel bad? And he's just like gives this frivolous smile. It's just like, I don't feel bad one bit. And it's just like, oh my god, I want to.
And then he was like, I plead my right to the Fifth Amendment. But this guy, it's like, he caused a lot of controversy because he bought. So before he raised the price of the AIDS medication by like 3,000% or whatever it was, it's like he had in secret bought this Wu-Tang Clan album that was like, they made one copy of it and they like got rid of the masters and everything, and they had this one album they're going to sell it to some fan for like the highest bidder or whatever it was, and he paid like $2 million for this thing. So it essentially looks like this guy bought a Wu-Tang Clan album for $2 million and then raised the price of AIDS medication to pay for it. And Wu-Tang Clan, they responded pretty appropriately to the situation in support of like the homosexual community, because they understood that this is a moment to either kind of be silent about it and like look at their own agenda, or represent what is actually going on, which is, I personally think, as much as this guy has like denied it in every way, there is a lot of homophobia in this scenario. And so I feel like people like that going above and beyond to make it clear that they're not in support of this kind of shit is important. And unfortunately, there's a lot of strife in like the rap community currently about this kind of stance and whether or not gay people should be accepted in rap. And it's weird because I, as a white musician, will never use the N-word in music, even though a lot of white musicians back in the day did to make a point politically. Dead Kennedys, Patti Smith, John Lennon. But I respect that. I respect those boundaries. So for me, how come they can say tranny or faggot and that kind of thing? Because that's kind of a double standard. I don't like that at all. It's like, you know, I feel like, especially given that we're all part of communities that are shit on by the straight hetero cis, you know, people who aren't marginalized, you know? So it's like, instead of like shitting on one another, this should be an understanding of like, I'm kind of marginalized, you're kind of marginalized, you're kind of marginalized in different ways, albeit, but at the same time, we're all dealing with oppression on a systematic level in different ways. So why are we taking the oppression that's already being handed to us on a silver platter and like doing it to each other? This is fucking stupid. And so that upsets me because, you know, the average country musician like is like, you know, your Jason Aldeans, your Luke Bryans, like these really masculine beardy dudes, straighter than anybody on the planet, you know, into sugar shakers and love women. And it's like, there's no doubt in your mind that these are heterosexual, cisgender, white-ass dudes. So they're not marginalized at all, so they don't give a fuck. But, you know, when you're talking about people who are also dealing with systematic oppression, it's a little irritating that, like, there's not a little more banding together, you know? So that's something I would like to see change a lot in the next few years in music, but that's, I don't know. I think people like Kendrick Lamar are pretty socially progressive. They're pretty cool, but we don't have enough of those types of people, so.
Well, yeah, I'm just waiting for the Frank Ocean album to come out.
Exactly. Frank Ocean caused so much stir, you know, and did he even officially say that he is gay? You know, it's like, obviously like, people pretty much know, but it's like, I don't know if that's an official statement, you know, like, but it's enough of an issue to cause a lot of problems with his own friends, which is weird, you know?
Yeah, it's unfortunate because it has caused a lot of problems, but it also is this really amazing kind of trailblazing moment for music, because he's been so successful and found so much love from fans and, you know, from various musical communities. And so it sucks that it was divisive, but at the same time I feel like overall the trajectory is positive as a result of him.
Of what it is at the moment, but I think it's.
I'm hopeful.
Like it had to happen.
Hopefully optimistic. At least.
Channel Orange is a great album. Like, who gives a fuck if he's gay? It does not matter. That is a great album, and anyone who listens to it and thinks otherwise does not have ears, because it's beautiful, you know. So it's frustrating because once again, social agenda gets in the way of the quality of the product.
Frank, if you're listening, your album's got to come out like as soon as possible.
I think he knows.
I've been waiting for
He's
Boys
not
Don't
just-
Cry since about June of last year. It just keeps getting pushed back. I'm so sad.
He's just trying to make it as good as possible.
I'm sure when I hear it, the wait will be worth it. But while I'm waiting, I'm just a little sad that I don't get to listen to it yet.
Should we wrap up pretty soon? I think we're at about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Doing a lot of
We're-
ranting.
we've
I'm
been-
sorry, you guys.
Oh no, you're fine. You know, this was good. It flowed. We got on a lot of topics. We've been trying to get on more topics than just like, ask a question. This is perfect. We talked. That's good.
Yeah.
So
People are gonna be like, "Oh man,
Thanks so
that
much for
person
coming on.
was so agenda laden." Like,
no, no.
We were talking to Greg from After Hours, like
Yeah.
how
we've mentioned a lot.
how much of participating in the arts and participating in a progressive agenda is inherently linked. It's a question that I don't think we've really been able to answer, but there's clearly a relationship in that.
Right. Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you so much for coming on.
yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's been a good time. Appreciate.
And let's remind people of the shows coming up because we talked about it in the very beginning.
Yeah,
So-
no, that's cool. First one, I'm not involved in this one, but this is like a 2-day event for the Neti Collective, which is my thing. You can find that on Facebook. Like, look up the Neti Collective, facebook.com/Neti Collective, whatever. That is Beer Fest after party. That is Friday, July 22nd, and then Saturday, July 23rd. And the first day on the 22nd is an acoustic night, Tear Soup, local Ann Arbor act, one of the acts on the bill that night. And then the second night is Veston Tyler, who's my booking partner, who will be doing some awesome chiptune music. And on that same night, on Saturday at around 7 o'clock, Ray Caraway with my band will be playing some tunes at the Rockamora Music Festival at the Nakamura Co-op. Be sure to check that out. That is a free event. Donation box, I'm sure, is going around, which highly recommend you throw something in there. A lot of great artists are participating in that. The weekend after that is Luther Fest. Veston Tyler will be playing in that as well, along with a lot of other Neti Collective artists that we've booked in the past. Sig Butts, After Hours Radio, they're all involved in these events as well. And then August 12th at Crossroads in Ypsi, I'll be playing with a band as well and sharing the stage with Matt Senna, a local singer-songwriter, as well as Ian Perfit with his project The Neighborhood, which I believe features... Is it both of you or just Sam?
I play drums.
You play drums. Okay, so Summer on drums, Sam on guitar, bass?
It's a lead guitar.
So Sam's bass, okay. Ian Perfit, Matt Senna, and I rocking the house, Crossroads, Ypsi. It'd be great. It's on August 12th, and you guys want any future updates, you can like my page, which is LR Caraway on Facebook, or go to Neti Collective, either at neticollective.com or Neti Collective on Facebook. Either one works. And yeah, hope to see you guys at the show. We have bracelets if you want one.
Ooh, I
They're
see
pretty
one of those.
pretty nifty.
Nice.
So yeah. But yeah, thanks y'all for having me on. I really had a good time.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah,
And thanks for listening,
Thanks for
people.
everybody for
Share,
listening.
like, comment, subscribe. What else do you do with things? Tweet, twat.
Troll.
Don't twat.
Don't twat.
Troll, yeah.
Work.
Tweet with your twatter.
Troll. Don't troll. Well, troll. We want any press is good press, right? Controversy.
Like if Donald Trump wants to build a wall around this podcast,
Like
then
we're okay with it. We're not like happy about it, but like let's talk about it.
yeah.
So before we dig ourselves into any deeper holes, we're going to sign off. Thanks, everybody, for listening. See you next time.